March of 2025, I had planned to do a sermon that nobody has ever heard and you never will hear it. It was gone. So 16 months ago, I was going to teach on the most important commandment according to Jesus. You know what that is, right? So the most important commandment, Jesus was once asked, someone asked him, Jesus, what is the most important commandment? And he said, it's this. It is, love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind, with all your strength. And he went on to say, and love your neighbor as yourself. He said, the entire law, you ever read the Old Testament law? The entire law is summed up in this commandment. Love God, love people. So he said, this is it. This is what it's all about. It's about loving God and loving people. And I knew that this was like if Jesus says the most important commandment is this, then my goodness, we got to pay attention to that, right? It's like, this is it. Now, here's the challenge with this, and why you've never heard that sermon from that day, is because I had nothing really new to tell you. I knew it was important, and I've been following Jesus since 1984. And in all that time, I honestly couldn't say that I loved him more. And it was one of the biggest frustrations of my life. Because something wasn't working. It's like, if Jesus said this is what it's all about, and I honestly just felt like every year, it was like I loved him pretty much the same as the year before, no real difference in the way I love him. And it says, no, I want you to love him with all your heart, all your soul, all your mind, all your strength. And I'm like, something's wrong because I don't see any difference at all. Loving God was sort of like, to me, loving the planet Saturn. How many of you love the planet Saturn? Right? Well, you believe in it, right? It's out there, but it doesn't seem to be something you love, right? So I didn't have a solution to it. So I wrote a sermon anyway. Like I said, you'll never see it. And that Thursday night of that week, I was frustrated, and I had been talking to God all week about my frustration, and I was in my office, and I was cleaning my office, and I put on a sermon on YouTube by a man named Dallas Willard. I talk about him all the time now. And lo and behold, of all the sermons he has online, the one I pick is all about how to love God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. And I was so amazed at what I was hearing that I scrapped that sermon. I redid everything around what I was learning that day, and I started a series at that time last March that I consider to be the most important series I've ever done. Many of you have heard it. It's called Come Alive. Because that's the offer of Jesus. Jesus didn't come and say, I have come so that you may have church services and have them more abundantly. He didn't come so that we could have religious rituals. He said, I've come so you can have life. That you would be more alive with me than you will ever be without me. That's what he came to bring us. So that's why I called it Come Alive. Because that's the offer. I learned so much in that series, and the interesting thing, if you were here at the time, or if you've gone online, you've ever listened to it, if you're watching online, you can pause this and go watch those. So they're way more important. But it was me learning and teaching as I was learning it. And so over the last 15 months, my knowledge of what it takes to obey Jesus' command has grown significantly. And I always knew I would want to come back to that subject today, and this is that day. So I'm super excited to talk to you again about this topic, this verse, what Jesus said is most important. Now, some of you are already starting to think, Brian, who cares, right? Because why would I want to know how to love him more? That's the question. You're like, it's a beautiful day. We could be outside doing anything, and you're in here, and we want to talk about loving him more. So let me give you some things to think about. Here's what I've learned in the last 15 months. If I continue to learn how to love him more, here's what will happen in your life. Number one, you would trust him completely. Because love and trust go hand in hand. And the more you know how much he loves you and the more you love him in return, the more trust grows. And what Jesus said is, oh, by the way, if your trust in him will grow, then the impossible will become possible and regular in your life. You will see God doing things in your life that can never be done by you. And I kind of want more of that. I don't want the possible. That's just me. I want the impossible. One of the most interesting things I've learned over the last 15 months is you would never be afraid again. Now, for some of you, that seems like a pipe dream. What if it isn't? Our daughter Maggie came to us recently, and she's been reading the Bible more, and she said, did you know that 365 times in the Bible it says, do not be afraid? That's right. And she's like, that's one for every day of the year. Yep. You think God has a theme? Right. And if your love for him grows, then your fear of this world diminishes. I want that. And then you get to experience his character in you, more joy and more peace, and obedience becomes easy. And really significant. How many Americans live with no sense of purpose at all? And this is not the life that he's inviting us into. We can have his purpose as a partnership in this world. So the reality is, this is part of what I've been learning over the last 15 months. And what I want to do is I want to start a new series today called Alive Again. And what I want to start with is I want to show you exactly how to do what Jesus said to do when he made that command. And we're starting with the first one, how to love God with all your heart. Those are his words. So I want to ask you to open up your program and take out the notes that you find inside. Grab a pen. Welcome to those of you who are watching online. So glad that you're watching. This is the most important topic. And the reason I say that is because Jesus said that. This is it. This is the pinnacle of Christianity, is learning how to love him with all our heart, soul, mind, and strength. And I want to show you what I've learned about it. So excited about this. So let's jump right into this. Number one, you have to, first off, if you're going to love him with all your heart, you have to understand what your heart is. So once I started listening to that Dallas Willard sermon 15 months ago, I have, for the most part, not stopped. Here's what I do. In the morning, when I get up in the morning and I get ready, I go to YouTube and I turn on a message from Dallas Willard. Almost every day of my life for 15 months. So I have listened to a lot of his content and learned so much. And one of the things he said once that just blew me away, he said, you can't care for anything unless you understand it. Does that make sense to you? You can't care for anything unless you understand it. It totally made sense to me because in the history of my life, I have killed every single houseplant I have ever owned. Every single one. Killed them all. As a matter of fact, I years ago was joking about this with someone, and they brought me a plant from my office and said, Brian, even you can't kill this one. They were wrong. I killed it in record order. And I don't want to. I love plants. You should see our house. My wife is amazing at this. We have house plants everywhere. She doesn't kill them, but if you give them to me, they'll kill them. And the reason is because I don't understand it, right? Isn't it true? And it took me a long time to understand this. Some plants need direct light. Some don't. If you put them in the light, you'll kill them. Well, I didn't know that. And I don't know which ones belong where. And then some need a lot of water, some need a little water, some don't need much water at all. And if you don't know that, you can't care for that. Does that make sense? Right? You can't care for anything you don't understand. So tell me, if I said to you right now, sit down, write out what your heart is. Could you tell me what your heart is? Do you know? Jesus said, love the Lord your God with all your heart. If you don't understand it, you can't care for it and you can't do it. And 15 months ago, I would have given you an American definition of heart. Because what's the American definition of heart? It's your feelings, right? That's not at all what heart is in the Bible. So this blew me away. This is the picture he put up, and at the time when he was teaching, and Dallas Willard's been dead for a little while now, he had an overhead projector. So some of you remember those? He had an overhead projector. He put this paper on the overhead. I don't even know, what did you call those things that he put on the projector? I don't even remember anymore. And this was the picture he showed, and it blew me away. And he said, listen, this is what Jesus is saying. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. And he said, so here's the center of what you are. It's your heart. And he pointed out that heart, will, and spirit in the Bible are the same. They're the same. So when we talk about my will, my heart, my spirit, they're the same. But then the next one is your mind, right? Love him with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. Mind is both thoughts and feelings. And this is what we screw up in American culture all the time. We think feelings are heart, not in the Bible. Totally different. So you have to unlearn something. I'll show you. I can't wait to talk to you about this one next week. So much I've learned on that one. Then you got your strength, right? Your body. And then you've got your neighbor as yourself. That's your social relationships and love with your heart, soul. And so he said, this is what the parts of what make up a human being. They are eternal, except for our body, obviously. We use that now to have an eternal impact. And then he said this. He said, the heart, the spirit, the will is the executive center of your life. And I didn't know what that meant. If I were to say to you, what does it mean to say that your heart is the executive center of your life? Many of you would be like, I don't know. But you ever work in a big company? So you ever work in a big company, you know that they have lots of different departments, right? You got accounting and marketing and operations. The company I work in has about 3,000 plus people, and we have a lot more departments than that. But do they make the decisions about the company's direction? No. The executive team does, right? Even in our company, that's what we call it. We call it the ELC, the Executive Level Committee. And they are the ones who decide, what are we going to do? What matters most? What direction are we taking the company? What are we committed to? And so this is what the executive team does. And so what he's saying is, your heart, your spirit, your will is the executive center of your life, meaning this is where you decide what I'm going to do, what matters most to me, what direction I will go in, what decisions I will make. So this is what your heart is. So your heart decided to come to church today or to turn on a video today. Your heart decided that. It was your heart, your will, your spirit. He said decisions, and Jesus said we live from here, from our heart. Once you understand this and you read the words of Jesus again, you will look at it in a totally different way. Because he talked about heart all the time. I always just interpreted it as my feelings, and I was wrong, because that's American culture. That's not biblical culture. Jesus taught that we live from our heart, and he said, from our heart flow all our behaviors, our decisions, our desires. Here's this verse. Now, think about this verse now in a totally different way. Jesus once said, what comes out of a person is what defiles them, for it is from within, out of a person's heart, that evil thoughts come. Now, isn't that interesting? We tend to think that evil thoughts come out of our mind, right? He's saying there is and we're going to get into this next week, there is a tremendous connection between what's going on in your heart and what's going on in your mind. And when your heart isn't aligned with God, your thinking won't be aligned with God either. But then he doesn't stop with evil thoughts. Then he starts listing all these behaviors. Look at this. Sexual immorality. Stealing stuff that doesn't belong to you. That behavior is because of a heart issue. Murder, adultery, greed, malice, deceit, lewdness, envy, slander, arrogance, folly. He said all of these evils come from inside. You live from the inside out. And Jesus was teaching that your heart, the executive center of your life, is driving everything that all of us see and encounter with you. All of the things in your life that you've regretted, that you don't ever want to do again, that you've paid a price for, Jesus would say that comes from here. It came from within. And again, as an American society, we don't know this. And so we say things all the time. Let me give you an example of what we say. About a year ago, I showed you a picture of this woman. So this was a track meet for high school girls and a relay race, as you can tell. And in the relay race, this girl started to pass this girl. So the girl in the outside lane was passing the inside girl. And as she ran by, this girl took that baton and smacked her in the head with it. And that girl fell to the ground, obviously in a lot of pain. And at first, the girl that had hit her said, oh, it was an accident. But cameras are rolling all the time. And there were all these things that showed, yeah, you want to try that again? Was that an accident? So then she tried to defend her behavior, and she said, I'm a good student. I've worked really hard. I'm a good person. And she said, I don't know where this came from. And Jesus would go, it came from your heart. It came from inside you. This was inside you. How many times have we heard that in American society, right? That's just not like me. I'm not that kind of person. I don't know where that came from. And Jesus would be like, I do. I know where that came from. It came from your heart. You live from the inside out. The behavior that you see, the thinking in your mind, all of that is a direct output of whatever's going on inside of you. And so this is what Jesus would teach. It comes from within. And so does this verse now make more sense? Above all else, guard your what? Guard your heart. And why? Because everything you do flows from it. It's not saying guard your feelings. That's American culture. They reject that. This is the executive center of your life where your will and your decisions and your behavior all flow from. Does this make more sense? When you go back through and read through Jesus' words now, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, with this definition of heart and mind, you'll see he talks about it all the time. And your heart is incredibly important to God. It's precious to him, and he wants it. He wants your heart. So, can you see how important your heart is to God? And how do we make sure that our hearts are actually driving the kind of life that would be pleasing to God? And that's really the big question. So this is what I've learned. This is the only other thing I'm going to talk to you about. And I changed on my notes and yours it says, know what? Scribble that out. I changed this whole way of wording this. I often do that. So instead, I want you to write that. Learn how to connect your heart to God. That's the goal. Since heart is where Jesus started, love him with all your heart, you have to learn how to connect your heart with God. So I'm going to tell you, in 15 months of learning about this and how to care for my heart and how my heart comes alive in connection with God, these are the two most important things I've learned. I'm not pretending like, oh my goodness, I know everything about this, okay? I'm only telling you what I've learned so far. When I do this series again next year, I'll tell you all new things that I keep learning. So the first thing I learned, and most important, and I did talk about this a lot early on, is daily voluntary surrender. Daily voluntary surrender to God. That's what brings us into connection with God. So look at how Jesus worded it. Look at this verse. It says, whoever wants to be my disciple must, look at that phrase, they have to deny themselves. So that's what I want, my kingdom come. I'm saying no to me. And I have to take up my cross daily and follow him. Okay, so that's not about me anymore. It's not about my desires, my will. That's all in my heart. I let that go and I say, what's in your heart? That's what I want to do. And remember, your heart is the most precious thing you have. You have to understand this. It's the most precious thing to God because he will not override your will. He'll respect it. If you go through life saying to God, hands off, my life, my way, my will be done, then he will respect that. He won't override your will. He wants instead your will freely given to him in surrender. I remember when I first started learning all this 15 months ago, there is a change that starts to happen when you're doing this around the word surrender. When I first heard the word surrender as a part of this, I mean, I've been a Christian so long. We talk about it all the time. We sing about it in our songs. There's an old hymn, I surrender some to Jesus, I surrender some. No, it's not how it goes. That's how we actually mean it, right? So surrender is a dirty word in American society. We don't surrender, right? We don't give up. And yet, it is the key to spiritual power and the key to a spiritual life with God. It's on the other side of surrender that you get to experience him. And the most important thing I learned about surrender in the last 15 months is this one. Learn to surrender all outcomes to God. That's the key. Because before I understood this, surrender just was kind of this concept. I'm going to surrender. Okay. Have you done that? Did you do that today? Well, I don't know. I prayed a prayer. Did I surrender? I didn't know what surrender was really about until, again, I was listening to Dallas Willard's message, and he mentioned this, and I'm like, oh my goodness, I hit pause, ran to my desk, typed it out. I'm like, this is it. This is what I've been missing. This is what I didn't understand. I've taught on this many times over the last year because it had such a significant impact on my life. It's about surrendering all outcomes to God. Surrender is releasing my demand for a particular outcome because I trust the God who holds all outcomes. So it's interesting now, when I look back over the last 15 months, it's not like God hasn't been trying to teach me this for years and years and years. You all know, if you come to this church or you listen online, that I talk a lot about a guy named George Mueller. He's been a profound influence on my life. We give his biography away every single Sunday there in the back. And one time, and I taught on this one years ago, and again, for those who don't know his story, he was caring for thousands of orphans in Bristol, England in the 1800s with no money. Every need he brought to God, and God provided, and didn't just, skate by. Sometimes they skated by to learn to trust, but many times it was super abundant. One time he was trying to buy land because God had shown him it's time to build an orphanage. And so they had this land deal, and all of a sudden at the last second, the land deal was about to fall apart. And I know how I would have responded. I would have tried to control that outcome. I'm going to go strong-arm that person. I'm going to go do what I need to do to make this happen, right? And his response is completely different. It literally is this, surrendering all outcomes to God. His response in the biography was basically this. He said, well, good. If God takes it away, it's only for the purpose of giving me something better. I mean, that's how we all respond when we lose something, right? You lose your job, and you're like, good. And God has taken that away to give me something better. Right? I mean, no, we don't tend to respond this way because we're not very surrendered, and it's learning to surrender all outcomes to God. So it's not like God hadn't been trying to teach me this. For a long, long time, he was. The problem is, and I've stated this over and over again, is that I like to be in control. I like it. My kingdom come, my will be done, is how I pray the prayer honestly. And that's not how the prayer goes, is it? And the deepest regret, or it's interesting when you begin to love him and really, really be in a deeper relationship with him, there are things in your life you look back on very differently, and I've talked about this one. One of the things that I deeply regret is a scene from my life years ago where I was in a situation with a leader, and the leader acted unethically, and I did the right thing, reported it, and it blew up in my face. I faced retaliation. It was an awful situation, and my will be done kicked in. I'm going to fix this. I'm getting out of here. And I began to work nights and weekends, writing new resumes, applying at jobs, interviewing everywhere I could. And I pushed and I pushed and I pushed and I pushed and I pushed. And I was full of anxiety and stress, and I was miserable because I had not released this outcome to God. I was going to control and make this happen on my own. You ever done that? Any of you a little bit miserable today because you're trying to control something that you cannot control? Trying to control the behavior of someone that you care about who's making decisions you don't love? Trying to control what your boss thinks of you, trying to control what the people around you, how they treat you, right? So, does this mean we just are passive, we never do anything? No, that's not it. We're obedient, but we don't demand outcomes. We release those outcomes to God. And this is certainly how Jesus lived. You want to read it? Look at what Jesus did in the Garden of Gethsemane. So right after the celebration where he introduced communion, he knows that Judas is betraying him, and the soldiers are coming to take him away, and he will be nailed to a cross. And you remember what he prayed, right? Going a little further, he fell with his face to the ground, and he said, "My Father, if it's possible, may this cup be taken from me, yet not as I will, but as you will." That's surrendering all outcomes to God. God, I'd like to leave this company, but I release this outcome to you. Not my will. Your will is all that matters to me. And so you bring your outcomes to him and you trust in him. So as I've gotten better at this, and can I say that again? Did you hear the wording on that? As I've gotten better. Okay, so you hear what I'm saying? I'm not there yet. But as I've gotten so much better at this over the last, especially this year, when the tests in my life have increased, and I've really been focused on releasing outcomes to God, two things have shown up in my life. And by the way, if you're wondering how to do it, in your program, I put this sheet. It says faith training sheet. This is the prayer that I pray when I'm stressed or anxious or scared. Those are all signs that I'm trying to control an outcome that's beyond me. And I follow this. And there's nothing magic about the words. You take your time, I take my time, and as I sit and I pray through this, the incredible thing that's happened, two things. Number one is so many of these things that normally would stress me out, I have peace about. And I'm not anxious or minimal anxiety, and when it does, I know to release that outcome to God. But here's the other thing that quite honestly, I never thought I would experience. You ever read the book of James? So James wrote in James chapter 1, verse 2, one of the most neglected verses in the American church. Dear brothers and sisters, when troubles of any kind come your way, consider it an opportunity for great joy. Right? When troubles of any kind come your way, is that your response? Wow, right! Great joy! An opportunity for great joy. So, never ever thought. I've known that verse, memorized it years and years ago. But the interesting thing is when you release outcomes to God, one of the signs that you're doing it is that you are able to sincerely thank God for the trials you're going through because you have anticipation that you will see God's work in that situation. And it becomes an opportunity for joy. Never thought I would experience that in my life. Knew the verse, didn't know it by experience. So, again, you have to understand that your heart is the center. And the first thing that connects your heart to God is voluntary surrender. And then you have to give your heart reason to believe that He is worth surrender. I would love to tell you that I did this next one on purpose, that I was smart enough to know this. Nope, wasn't. Do you know there's a verse in the Bible, matter of fact, a couple of places, where it says that if you seek Him, you will find Him. And then it says, in one of those versions, if you seek Him with all your heart. I'm so grateful He keeps those promises because I don't always, I never would have predicted what was about to happen next in my life. So I listen a lot to Dallas Willard, and then I started listening also to another podcast by a pastor named John Ortberg. He's got this wonderful podcast called Becoming New. And one day last fall, I was listening to that, and he did an interview, and I turned this one on YouTube. This is actually the interview. And this is on the back of your notes. You don't have to write it down. If you're interested in watching it, I put some of the resources that have had the biggest impact on me on the back of your notes. This video was an interview between John Ortberg and this man. His name is John Burke. And John Burke was an engineer, and he was a skeptic, and then he became a follower of Jesus, then became a pastor. Then he started researching what we call near-death experiences. He's interviewed almost 1,500 people now who have them. Millions of people have had them. And to be honest with you, I didn't care at all about this stuff. Didn't care at all about near-death experiences. Heard about it for years, never cared because, number one, there are a lot of con artists in this world who just lie about things like that. So I didn't care. The other thing is, some of those people, when they tell their story, they go through something and they interpret it in a way that I don't believe. But again, people do that all the time, right? They go through something and they interpret it the wrong way. And so what I did is I threw the baby out with the bathwater and said, well, there's nothing there. And I ignored it until listening to that. And all of a sudden I'm like, my goodness, there's a lot here. And so then I sent that video link to my kids, and my daughter Rachel listened to it. And then they were on a long trip, and so they bought his book on Audible. This is the book, Imagine Heaven. We still have one copy in the back. If someone wants it, it's yours. And near-death experiences, how they tie into what the Bible says. And so my daughter Rachel listened to this whole thing on Audible, and she said, "Dad, you've got to listen to this." And that was last October. I said, "Sure." Bought it on Audible, didn't listen to it until March of this year. Drove out to see my daughter in Omaha, Nebraska, and 6 hours out and 6 hours back, and for 12 hours, I immersed myself in this. And I was blown away. Completely blown away. It's interesting how much evidence God is giving of his reality in this world that we just aren't even paying attention to. I was stunned by what I heard. Matter of fact, if you were in the church at the time, you know I immediately pivoted and I did a series called Kingdom Come. And it was all about what these people are experiencing. And and I haven't stopped, even though I don't teach that anymore. If you want to, if you're like me, I listen. I have a half-hour commute, so constantly during my commute, I'll just throw this podcast on, the Imagine Heaven podcast, and I will listen. And here's what you hear if you do this. You hear people who have these experiences where they die, and they step into the presence of a being of light and love. And it is beyond anything they've ever experienced. They've never been known and never been loved like that. And nobody wants to leave. And when they come back and tell us the stories, they say, this is the fake world, and that's the real world. And in story after story after story, their lives are changed. Many of them encounter this being of light and love, and they're not even Christians, and they come back and become Christians. Many of them have experiences where he says who he is, that he is Jesus. And it completely changes their lives. And so I've heard story after story after story after story of all these people who've encountered the living God in ways that I didn't know. And all of a sudden, I began to look at God differently as this God of beauty and love and power, and something interesting happened inside of me. Surrendering to a God of love, that becomes something you want to do. But loving a God of love, that becomes something you want to do. I didn't have to try. The more I understood what he's like, the more love was my natural response. Which is just what it says in the Bible, by the way, right? We love him because he first loved us. So I want to be clear about what I'm saying. I'm not saying that I, by my effort, became better at surrendering. Nope. As I learned more about who God is, I became more convinced that he was worth surrendering to. Your perspective on the word changes. And surrender is what you want, not something you resist. So that's your heart. So a couple of things as we finish up today. Are you clear that surrendering your will to God is the requirement for experiencing his great life? Are you clear? And how do you think about it? Is surrender your top priority? Did you think about surrender at all this last week? Did you come in here this morning carrying something that's made you feel anxious and worried and stressed and all of these things? Because that is the sign that you're trying to carry an outcome that's not yours to carry, and you haven't given that up to him yet. And is it possible that you resist surrender because you have some wrong images of God in your mind? For some of you who don't like surrender and you don't surrender, maybe the best thing you could do is start listening to that podcast and just get a better picture of just how much he loves you because then surrender becomes way easier. Let me have you bow your heads as we finish today. Now, some of you may be skeptical about all of this. One of my favorite things, I haven't done this in a long time, is many, many, many people have encountered God through the skeptic's prayer. The skeptic's prayer is simply something like this. Say, God, I don't even know if you're there. But if you are, I don't want to miss you. I want to know you if you're real. So, if you're real, show me. And then the promise of the Bible kicks in for you. If you seek him, you will find him. Don't ignore him. Just pray the skeptic's prayer. But some of you are beyond that. You're not skeptical. You understand and know that Jesus is real, and you've heard at some point in your spiritual journey about his sacrifice on a cross for you and how he died and rose again. And the Bible says that it is at the point of faith and confidence and belief in Jesus that our lives are really turned over. Maybe the next step for you spiritually is to let him give you this gift of forgiveness and eternal life. Through faith in him, that's where the changes happen. And if you want that, with your head bowed, you can say, Jesus, I'm turning my life over to you today. I want you. And I want the life that you have for me. I believe you died on that cross for me, and I'm asking you to forgive me. Be the leader of my life. In Jesus' name, amen. Hey, we want to thank you for taking some time to watch this service today. We hope that you found it to be something that will really help you in your spiritual growth. If it raised questions for you that you want to ask us, you can go to our website, again, at Peniel Church Life, and you can send a message to us through our website. Or if you've made a spiritual commitment and you want us to know about it, we would love to send you some follow-up material in the mail. So please don't hesitate to reach out to us through the website. And as always, thanks again for watching.